Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I'm really excited to have a spiritual life coach, wisdom keeper, and priestess in women's wisdom circles with me here today, Arlia Hoffman. And hang on for just 1 second, we'll be right back. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. Welcome back. So Arlia Hoffman was born in Dallas, Texas. She has lived all over the Southeast and calls Atlanta home. She holds a master's in depth psychology and has spent the last 2 decades working in feminine spirituality and psychology. After her own spiritual awakening at 37, she answered the call to mentor women ready to revolutionize their lives. And she now coaches women and works in leadership development. In 2014, she founded the Women's Sanctuary for Women's Sacred Practice and launched the Women's Sanctuary podcast in 2020. Welcome, Arlia.
Thank you, Molly. I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks for that great introduction.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. So tell us about that spiritual awakening at 37. That sounds really exciting to me.
Yeah, it sounds exciting now.
Right, in
It was
hindsight.
crazy. I didn't realize how typical it was at the time of women in midlife who kind of look around and go, wait a minute, did I choose this life? Is this something I want? How how have I gotten here, and is this really who I am? And that's what it was for me. I had a pivotal event in my family. It just made me question everything. And I mean, thank God it did. I suddenly realized that as much as I loved my life, I had a family and children and the house and the settled life and the PTA, and it wasn't me. It really wasn't. I mean, I it was a version of me that was pinned in, hemmed in, and stuck in a box because my parents gave me a box. I was like, "Oh, this is a pretty box. I'll live in this box."
Mhm.
When given the opportunity to look at it, I was like, "Oh, no. Actually, no." Um, so
Actually, no. I love
actually, no. No, thank you. Um, so it was a very messy, messy ride because I had a bachelor's in psychology, but I wasn't, and I was sort of awake. I was awake enough to question everything that I'd accepted as truth. And that was sexually, spiritually, mentally, physically, psychologically. But nobody had told me how to fix that, how to change it. And so I basically just imploded my life. And, looking back now, hindsight's 2020, I'm also very, forgiving and respectful of whatever me at 37 had to go through, but it was very messy. But coming out the other side, I was um, I was independent, I was autonomous, I was still a strong mother to my children, and I was on the path of discovering who I am and who I want to be. Through that whole process, I thought the one thing that kept me going were 2 questions. One was if I could go back, would I? The question was always no. And the second thing was I was sure in my bones that the role model I had been for my children was not what I wanted them to see. I didn't want them to see the compliant, docile, soulless woman almost that they had for a mother who just didn't complain and did what she had to do. And if I felt like I could become the strong role model for my girls of how a woman should live her life so true to her own self, that's what I wanted to be. And that's what kept me going in the midst of the chaos. And we are, okay, I'm going to have to do some quick math. We're about 15 years beyond that point. And so even once I got a few years beyond it, I was beginning to understand that there were other women as clueless as I was as to how to make their life true for themselves. And if I could help anybody with my experience, I wanted to do that.
I love that. That's so powerful. I was raised by a very creative and very spiritual mother, and I can't tell you how much of a gift that has been to
Mhm.
me in allowing myself to choose a creative life and to choose to forge my own path and to choose to be unfuckwithable in my
Yeah.
spirituality and my choice and my like ambition and all of that, that was so useful and also so inspiring to have that. So I
I
understand.
love that we represent both sides of that coin because it's not one or the other.
Right.
It's not effortless. Oh, you wake up at 18 and go, oh yeah, this is who I am. This is what I do. What I want to do. For some women, it is, and for some women, it could be 30, it could be 37, it could be 45, it could be 56, when they realize that whatever they've been living isn't true for them, and it's time to make a change, and it's time to fully own their own power.
Yeah.
I remember at one point in grad school, we were discussing this dichotomy of what is a midlife awakening, and my department chair said, "Not me. Like, I know who I am, and I've worked hard to get here, and I'm trucking along, being as authentic as like, okay." So so for those women who do have that midlife crisis slash awakening, um, you know, that's who I'm
Yeah.
here for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't mean to make it sound like I've had that since birth because,
No.
we rebel against our parents and we all have to find our own way.
Yeah.
I was very much aimless. I was just fortunate to
Mm.
have a mom who reminded me that I was on my perfect path, even as it looked like it was aimless
Yeah.
and meandering and useless.
I'm not sure,
And
does it ever not look aimless? I mean, I
yeah.
don't.
I don't know. I mean, I was very much avoiding at all costs any kind of purpose, any kind of path, any kind of dead end job,
Mm.
and just not doing anything of value in my eyes to figure that out. And then finally it came up and it arose and
Mhm.
I got to do the personal growth to then choose it and become it and have it. And luckily I had along the way the support of a mom who had done it before me and who had set an example that yes, you get to make your own path if you want to. And that belief gave me more possibility consciousness around it. But I wanted to say that that's such a gift to your daughters that you recognized you weren't being the person that you wanted to be. And then you did whatever the heck it took to get into alignment with who you actually wanted to become. And I know there are so many women out there, so many people out there who think that maybe this is all life has to offer me. Maybe I should just count my blessings and call it good. And yes, that is true. And if you have something tapping on the shoulder saying, but what else is there? Then be willing to get curious, be willing to ask questions and get
And
support.
listen, and
Yeah.
listen to that voice. I have learned that that voice is indeed a still small voice, and, the more you listen, the more it trusts you and the more it talks. It's definitely a relationship, and, um, I I was like I had a friend who called me a runaway freight train because by the time I began listening to that voice, I had been so compressed, not oppressed, but compressed, compacted, that when I gave myself permission to be me, I was that's why it was so messy. I was just a freight train. I was
Mhm.
like hell, I'm gonna get what I want. I'm gonna get it now because I was so starved,
Mhm.
soul starved. So, um, for some people it happens that way. And if people need you had your mom. I had a spiritual teacher who was my rock, absolutely my rock. I walked into her office in the midst of my divorce and I just fell apart because for the first time I felt like I was in a safe space. And every woman needs that, no matter what they're going through, whether it's a business evolution, a personal evolution, a spiritual awakening. To me, they're all the same, but they need people to just walk with them.
Yeah,
You know, we don't need an outside authority, but sometimes we need outside voices reminding us of our own inner authority.
absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. And I want to just bring up a limiting belief I used to have, which is that we have to break down to break through. I think in the
Mm,
process of expansion and in the path of awakening, that there are going to be some times where, like you said, you blow up your life and where everything has to change and everything starts changing really fast. And it's probably uncomfortable. There are
mhm.
also awakening moments and insights and like transformations that are gentle. I just want to put that into the minds of anyone who's listening, that sometimes it
Absolutely.
can be gentle. And yes, sometimes it looks like divorce, and it looks like moving to a new place. It looks like starting a business or ending a business, or all kinds of different things that might seem messy and uncomfortable, and that is very much still the path of awakening. Sometimes that sometimes it is a breakdown to departiculate things back into putting the molecules into chaos, because from chaos new things can be created from those same molecules. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. One of my heroes is Sue Monk Kidd. She wrote Secret Life of Bees, but
Yeah.
she's been a writer for a long time. And one of the books that really got me through was Dance of the Dissident Daughter. She came out of organized religion and into her own spiritual awakening into the sacred feminine. And for her, it was messy, but it was all an internal process, and her outer life pretty much stayed the same. And so that kind of gave me the contrast to my own process. But I also wanted to share this mantra that I've developed or the friends and partners and I have developed in the context of relationship, which is I am listening and ready to learn my lessons gently and with compassion.
Gently,
Because
yes.
it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a meltdown.
It doesn't have to be a meltdown. And I think that people need to add that word into a lot of their affirmations. Like, I ask the universe to show me the path, I ask my body to show me the way. And then I always add in the word gently. Make the signs very obvious and clear and gentle.
And with compassion,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We don't need the car wreck to make a new pathway. We
No.
need something that's just a clear sign, like a billboard or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yes, please and thank you.
Yes, thank you. More, please. I love that. So, I mean, you've been doing this work for a while, and you've been watching women and supporting them in these spiritual awakenings. I'm curious, what do you see as the tipping point? How does somebody know that they're ready to get support with this thing? What is the common ground that usually it's like, okay, yeah, let's get to work on this?
Well, it usually is extreme discomfort. It's the discomfort that is no longer ignorable. It's just this driving sense that something has to change. And they recognize that, at least for them, my clients, nobody around them either understood the process or had any way to support them. And they needed to find a woman who could say, they needed validation. It's okay to be going through what you're going through. And um, yes, you need to be patient with it and give it time and give yourself permission to change. Really? Really, that's it. You need permission and support to change. Because I think a lot of women don't, it's right. When you rock your boat, everybody else's boat gets rocked. And
Hmm.
so it's giving yourself permission to be who you are now and not um, your past,
Yeah.
not who you've been yesterday, even.
Yeah, that song from Guys and Dolls is coming to mind, where it's like, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, you're rocking the boat. But it's like,
Yeah,
stand up, rock the boat. That's what we
absolutely.
need. We need
Tip
boat
it over,
rockers.
whatever it takes.
Yeah, sing.
Life is too short to be conforming and people pleasing.
Yeah,
Way too short.
absolutely. And so, what is not to say what's the outcome, but what do you start noticing in your clients, and what did you start noticing after life came apart and started getting put back together? What's that next version?
It's interesting because I have a former client who's now a colleague and a close friend, and she's like, I've made it. I'm here, and I'm still here. Like you still bring your stuff with you. It's not r- rainbows at the end of the process, but it is living that life that you've, like, she set very specific goals. I want my life to look this way, my home life, my professional life, my family life, and she designed it very specifically. And it took several years, but she got there.
Hmm.
So now she reminds herself, even in tough times, you know what? I wanted this. And she kind of sinks back into gratitude. So I think the outcome, if you want to call it that, for women is designing a life that's true for them, no matter what. No matter it is being able to take off the lenses of the culture and the other people around them and the things they've been taught. Just tear down all of those filters and come back home to what's true now and begin listening to that voice. And that's not easy. I mean, we make it sound easy. The spiritual community is like, oh, just listen to yourself, listen to your heart, you
Hmm.
know. do some yoga, center, meditate, and find out what you really want. Yeah, that's great. But living it in the 3D can be a hell of a challenge,
Mhm.
especially if you happen to be like I'm surrounded by a lot in the Southeast, and was my experience, a traditional woman with kids and a family, and suddenly you want to go off and be polyamorous and live in the woods. How's that supposed to work?
Mhm.
Like, how dare you, upset that system?
Right.
So for those women, it's somebody to say it's okay. We get to the bottom of what is it you want? What does that feel like? What does that look like? Maybe you don't know what it looks like, but you know how it feels. You can track the energy of where your soul is calling you, and that's the real piece. Is what is your soul calling you to, and can you hold space and give yourself permission to allow it to manifest?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's one of the pieces that I struggled with was, well, that inner turmoil of, well, yeah, I want that, but I can't have that. It's all those limiting beliefs that take time. Sometimes it's an instant, but sometimes it's years to break down the layers of the ways you've held yourself back. And so that's a process for anybody.
Yeah, and I love what you pointed out there, and I want to sort of highlight that there isn't a end point where everything is figured out and you don't have to play the game of life anymore.
Nope.
That you create a target or a vision or a next level, and then you get to go there and play the next game that's coming for you. Because once you start listening to that voice, it's not going to just shut up and go away and say, "Hey, you made it, enjoy it." You
Nope.
get to enjoy it and then play the next game, and I think that's really important. As an example, I 3 years ago had this vision of, instead of getting a place and my business was taking off, and instead of finding out where I wanted to live after being a nomad for 9 years already, or 8 or 9 years at that point, um, I had this vision that I wanted to create a van and I wanted to live in an apartment that I could have with me all the time wherever I go. And then I've had to look at my life now and acknowledge, like, I made that. Like, the game didn't stop. I still have things I want to create. I still have big projects on the horizon. I still have more of me to realize and actualize and allow to come forth and step into. That game doesn't change, but the vision continues to adapt and continues to morph. And I think it's really important as we go along to sit back and acknowledge the progress that we have made, to actually say, yes, like, I set that target or I created that vision and now I'm living that. And I get to keep asking, what's next? What's my big game? What do I want to play? How do I want to keep growing?
Absolutely. And yeah, there isn't a destination. There really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we still, even if we know that, we continue to create goals for ourselves and destinations, but there really isn't. Um, I I am I'd say I'm in the best place ever in my life. And there's still some big pieces for me that haven't manifested. But it hit me about a year ago, like, I've arrived.
Hmm.
I've arrived. And that doesn't mean I have a lot of money or I have a lot of things or I have, as like all the projects I want. It just feels like I'm seated in myself, and I can feel the pieces of life that I want to manifest moving through me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's that river of, okay, there's still a lot of life left and a lot of things that I want to do, but I'm here. Like, I feel like I have arrived. I've arrived, like, right here in this moment, and I'm okay with where I am.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to sound like left field, but my current gauge for how centered I am and how present is the the old, I don't even remember now where it's from, the old warrior adage, today is a good day to die.
Mm.
And if I died today, would I be happy? Would I be happy dying in this moment with how I've lived my life? And if I can say, especially like if I'm on the freeway and these little fears come up about, having a wreck or something, like, today is a good day to die.
Hmm.
Like, that brings me so much peace. Like, it really doesn't matter what happens. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Life is good, and I am
You came, you
I'm here.
became, yeah, you
I'm
actualized.
here for whatever happens.
Yeah. And honestly, the process of creation or starting a business or, choosing a happier life, when you come from that place of I've already arrived, that becomes more fun. Everything is like creating your life is no longer about proving you can or about having all those, benchmarks of success or about finding the perfect partner. It's more about how much more of this can I express now
Yeah.
today? How much
And let me tell
more
you, as a
can come through
Capricorn,
me? Yeah.
that's a that's an accomplishment to get to the place where I'm not so hung up and on the benchmarks and taking myself too seriously.
Yeah.
So,
I'm a Capricorn too. Happy birthday.
thank you. You too.
Yeah. But that, I mean, it isn't an end goal. And at the same time, it's something to look for and to find a path to, is that feeling of this is it. And this is
Mhm.
it. The it can continue evolving. The it can continue manifesting and actualizing and reiterating. But the feeling of this is it is a place to get to, in a way. It's
Yeah.
what can we get out of the way so that here is where you are. Here is where
Yeah.
you've been
The
meant to be.
eternal moment of the now.
Yeah.
There's this book I read about photography. Yeah, it's about photography. Can I remember his name? I think it's Jeff Dyer, and I love the title of the book. It's called The Ongoing Moment.
Mm,
Like, here is this moment, and it's never ending. It's an ongoing moment.
yeah,
Love that.
exactly. And how does it get any better than this? And what else is possible now?
Exactly. It
Yeah.
doesn't get any better than this when you're fully here now because anything is handleable.
Yeah. Doable.
Workable. Doable.
Haveable.
There you go.
Haveable, beable, doable. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
you're
I
unfuckwithable.
unfuckwithable. Exactly. That's one of my favorite words. I love that. So tell us more about your podcast.
Oh, the Women's Sanctuary. Well, I'm thrilled about it. I'm really excited about it. It's one of those places where I feel like I've arrived.
Yeah.
um, yeah, we were doing in-person temple work for 6 years here in the Atlanta area and in some satellite cities, and I absolutely love it, and I do miss it. And I had considered a podcast for a long time, but when 2020 came, I felt like this is the time. And what was interesting is that maybe maybe a month before lockdowns and things like that, I just wasn't feeling. I was losing some of my excitement and energy for the in-person temples, and I was like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense." Like, but once it once we were, circumstances changed, I was like, I just don't want to do that anymore. It was so easy just to let it go because it just didn't speak to me anymore. So I got really curious and started listening and just really felt the drive for the podcast. So I started that, and it's I call it it's the Women's Sanctuary, and it's a place where where women connect. Is devoted to sisterhood and the divine feminine, um, and really interviewing women who are who are changing their lives as we speak. They're living in the moment and they're making changes and they're working in the world and giving back to women. And I just find them infinitely fascinating. And it's been so rewarding. I didn't realize how much fun it would be to just be listening and hearing women's stories and amplifying their voices. To me, that's what thrills me. And to me, it is as sacred as temple practice because I'm holding space for women's voices and them standing up in their power and then get the opportunity to put that out in the world. That absolutely thrills me.
I love it. Yes, podcasting is really fun and you get to meet so many amazing people like
Yeah.
I am right now. Will you tell us a little bit more about the Women's Sanctuary and the live ceremonies and stuff that you held?
Yes. It's based on the practices developed by Shamali Arda and the Awakening Women's Institute. And I founded the first women's temple in the Southeast here in Atlanta. And the idea is it is 2 hours of present embodied practice for women. There are many ways to contact your own soul and your own spirit or your sacred feminine. For women, a lot of times the easiest avenue is through the body. And of course through the mind and the soul and the heart, but this practice is focused on the body. So through movement and meditation, um, a lot of music, we it's so hard to describe. We drop into the body and are with it and are with our experience in a fairly structured way. We give it a container in which to experience it, and then we also build sisterhood through um, learning to trust each other, learning to not be in competition but in cooperation. There's a whole sisterhood manifesto about respecting each other, respecting ourselves, and trusting each other. And so when you combine all that with sacred touch, where we're just ministering to each other's bodies in very sacred ways, such as energy work and things like that, you create this experience where women are able to really deepen into their soul, into their core, and connect with whatever um, is divine for them. And we use a lot of archetypes and goddesses, um, but really those are frameworks to understand the complexity of who we are as divine human beings. So, I've heard women tell me, I've heard had women tell me more than once, like, I didn't even realize what I was missing. I had no idea I even needed this. But it meets that deep longing in women's souls that we didn't even know we needed because our culture has been missing it for so long. Women have been doing this for thousands of years. So I say when we sit down to temple, I say we are tapping into an ancient lineage of women before us who have always gathered in circle to support and be with each other and to
Yeah.
just be with each other. And like the practices are almost icing on the cake. It's building that community of women that it's really the core of those practices. Um, and there's still many women's temples going on all over the world in
Yeah.
person, hopefully. So continuing to build that sense of sisterhood and trust among women.
It's really powerful and important, and I love that you spoke to the ancient, like, history of it, because women have been the in community and gathering and raising children as a village and
Hmm.
not doing everything alone and solo and not seeing other women as competition. And there's so much deep need for it, and I think, like you said, we're not even necessarily aware of that need. And it's been, for me, an unfolding process because I am such an independent person, of
Hmm.
leaning into community and leaning into the power of having people who have your back, and especially as a woman, having women who have your back, that want to see you succeed and that see your greatness. For me, there have been so many times where I was ready to quit or I was ready to give up, and it was other people seeing me as the person I was becoming before I could even grasp it, that kept me
Mm.
going and kept me on track, or kept me motivated on my own vision, and didn't give up and allowed more to come through me because of that. So thank you for doing that work and for facilitating that kind of space. It's super important.
Thank you. I love the way you said that. Women who have your back and could see what you couldn't even see about yourself.
Yeah.
We need each other for that kind of mirror.
Yeah. The witnessing
We
and the
really do.
reflection.
Yeah. And
Definitely.
when women come together, the body remembers.
Mm-hmm.
We don't remember, our mothers don't remember, but our bodies do. And
Yeah.
it doesn't take long if women are open for them to really open and receive and build that sistership.
Yeah, and it might not always come in your family.
Mhm.
I have many brothers and no sisters, and some people have sisters that they just don't connect with, and some people have mothers who aren't that nurturing. It's okay to go out and get this from somewhere else. It doesn't have to come from your blood, and it doesn't have to have been something you've witnessed before to lean into it and
Yeah.
to receive it and accept it.
I think the other important piece to say is it's out there.
Yeah,
It's out there. That the kind of relationship with women who where you can develop sisterhood and it is actually mutually supportive and loving and caring, and they've got your back, it does exist. I think a lot
Yeah,
of people, a lot of women have either don't know it exists or have become cynical, but it's there.
it's
It's out
there.
there.
We're ready for you.
We're living examples of it.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, we're almost out of time. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Uh, the website is thewomenssanctuary.com.
Women's
Um,
plural.
yeah, thewomenssanctuary.com.
Yeah.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and and you can email me through the website. It's Arlia at thewomenssanctuary.com. I'd be happy to talk with anybody about the podcast if or private temple practice. I'm developing a Patreon, so there will be some special offerings there. But yeah, they can also find the Women's Sanctuary podcast wherever they find their podcasts. And we're about to begin a new season.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show. Is there any last words of wisdom you want to leave people with?
Actually, yeah. As we move into 2021, just to listen to yourself, listen to your inner wisdom, and also really stay rooted in your community and your friends. I think that's what's going to help us get through this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the show. And everybody listening, thank you so much for showing up and tuning in and receiving this episode. If you'd like to keep this podcast commercial free, you can go to wildheartsriseup.com/podcast and find my Patreon version of supporting this podcast. Super grateful for all of your support. And thank you again for being someone who listens to podcasts and who shows up to gain wisdom and insight and new information. And thank you again so much, Arlia, for being on the show. And that's all we have for you guys today. Tune in next week for another episode of Tactical Magic.